Ranked choice voting in Virginia. A couple things. When I do this in person, I really like to start by asking the room who feels like they can explain ranked choice voting to someone they know. And I get some tentative hands. It's usually a pretty mixed bag, and that's just the way I like it. This is really intended to be a ranked choice voting 101 and an introductory survey course, right? So that by the end of this, hopefully everyone will feel that they can explain this to friends. The other caveat I'm going to give right here at the beginning is because we have a limited amount of time, I am going to be talking about the kind of ranked choice voting that would be used in a single winner election, which is most of our elections in Virginia. But we're talking about electing one city council person, a mayor, a delegate, a congressperson, etc. You'll have to come back. We'll have to do a follow-up one and spend more time talking about how ranked choice voting can lead to proportional representation when you're talking about electing an at-large city council or something like that, multiple people at a time. So here we go. Ranked choice voting is a simple change to the way we cast our votes and make our preferences known that lead to better voter experience, better campaigns, and ultimately better government. For you as the voter, all it means is that instead of getting your ballot and picking one candidate that you like, instead you get to indicate your favorite and then you get to rank some backup choices. So obviously, if we're only electing one person, the best you can ask for mathematically, if you're picking one person to represent an entire electorate, is that they at least have the support of 50% of voters. If they can cross that 50% line, again, that's like the best mathematical floor we're able to put in place. And that doesn't currently exist. If you have a crowded field, if you have what we see in Virginia, usually at the local level or in party primaries, where you see 5 people, 6 people, 12 people running for the same office or the same nomination, all of a sudden we're electing folks with 22%, 26%, 35%. It's not a great way to run an election. It doesn't really make for an electorate that feels like they've been heard. So, how are we going to get to this point where we can identify someone who's got that majority support? So glad you asked. Voters have the option to rank their first choice, second choice, third choice, as many as are available on their ballot. And we can get into what determines that number. We're going to count everybody's first choice votes. If somebody has more than 50% of first choice votes, no matter how many people are in the race, great, then we're done. We didn't need to go to the second round. Everybody gets to go home early, all set. But when you have these crowded fields of candidates, that becomes increasingly unlikely. So what we're going to do, if that is not the case, is we're going to take the candidate who has the fewest first choice votes. They are eliminated. If that was your first choice, if you're one of those voters that cast your first choice vote for that eliminated candidate, now your vote's going to count for your second choice. And we do what's called an instant runoff vote. And we keep going with that process until someone cracks that 50% threshold. So I'm going to go through that again quickly with pictures, because I think that hearing it a few different ways is really what leads to those light bulb aha moments. So this is going to be slightly oversimplified because, this is just rectangles telling a story. But if you imagine that this is a graph showing the election results of a party primary, and there are 4 candidates running, and turquoise has about 44% of the vote, I think most of us who are used to first past the post plurality elections would look at this and go, yeah, right, turquoise did pretty well. That's a lot more than 25%, 44% in a 4-person race. Okay, that's pretty good. But here's the problem. If this is the only information we have, which is in our current system, the only information we'd have, we know how 44% of voters feel about turquoise as a candidate. We have no idea how 56% of voters feel about turquoise. They might be fine with turquoise. Turquoise might be their second choice. It might be okay. Or they might hate turquoise. They might say, absolutely not. I do not feel at all represented by turquoise. We don't know. But with ranked choice voting, we can find out. So we're going to eliminate dark purple, and we're going to see where dark purple's voters want to place their vote with their second choice. So in this example, those votes were pretty evenly split between turquoise and lilac. Turquoise is really close to 50%, but not quite there. So we're going to eliminate orange. We're going to keep going. Again, in this example, now turquoise is well over the 50% mark. And that tells us a few things. One, that they've got more of a mandate to lead, that well over the majority of voters support their candidacy. Maybe not as their first choice, but they're okay with it. So that is someone they feel can represent them. Two, look how many colors it took to reach that majority threshold. Turquoise wasn't going to be able to get there without knocking doors in areas they don't usually go to, talking to voters they don't usually go to, addressing parts of the base, parts of the electorate that maybe they've never had to talk to or work with before. They are better prepared to lead, better prepared to represent people. They have built a coalition, and that's the kind of candidate, one, who's going to actually make progress and speak on behalf of their voters, two, that are accountable to their voters, and three, are going to really understand what's needed. Now, usually you might say turquoise was ahead anyway. The actual outcome here didn't change. Why are we bothering? That's usually true. In about 90% of elections, the person who is ahead on the first ballot ends up ultimately winning. But one, you get all of this other information, which is helpful to everybody. And two, it is a gatekeeping mechanism against polarizing divisive candidates. If turquoise had been the person who 56% of voters really hated, if they're that kind of person who's either your first choice or no choice at all, then they can't win in a ranked choice voting election. And that is good news, because those are not the kinds of people who are going to get things done for us. Why ranked choice voting now? I mentioned last night at the forum that we launched our organization in 2022, and we're certainly relatively new to the RCV party. But even though it's been around for a century, I've noticed a huge uptick just in the last couple of years over how often people hear about it and how much information people have. And I just think it's this twofold reason that, one, we are just increasingly tribal. That was the theme of last night, is you have a duopoly in politics, and there's polarization to the point that people are disincentivized, voters and elected officials, from meeting in the middle. The other part should just be good news. More and more people are stepping up to run for office. More different kinds of candidates are stepping up to run for office. And our system isn't built to navigate those crowded fields. So RCV just provides the math to help those elections yield more representative results. All right, I'm going to try to slam through these benefits pretty fast because I do not want to take up time from our panelists. So here we go. We kind of covered this. Ranked choice voting ensures majority winners, as opposed to electing folks with 25, 35%. Benefit two, RCV rewards candidates who build consensus. And that, again, we covered in the graph, but you can't be an effective RCV winner without having a message that appeals pretty broadly in your electorate. The other flip side of that coin is that ranked choice voting disincentivizes negative campaigning. If you're in a primary with someone in a ranked choice voting election and you just launch these horrible attacks and get personal and run the kinds of ads that we unfortunately are used to seeing around election season, what you're actually risking is that you alienate those voters entirely. And if that opponent is eliminated in the ultimate tabulation before you, you've wasted those votes. You could have gotten those votes if you had instead said, oh, Bob, candidate Bob, sure. We have a lot in common. I hope that if you're ranking him first, you'll rank me second. Because now if Bob is eliminated first, now I get those votes. So it's pretty hard to get candidates to stop negative campaigning out of the goodness of their hearts. It's a multi-bazillion-dollar industry. It must work. So we have to change the incentive structure. And that's what I mean by really changing the system itself. Some of these next points, I think Tamaya is going to get into more. So again, we're going to zip through them a bit. But ranked choice voting eliminates spoilers. And I mean that in two different ways. One is the spoiler effect you see in presidential cycle years. You know, you see a Jill Stein or a Ralph Nader or a Ross Perot, and maybe there's a third party candidate or an independent who gets just enough votes to skew the results one way or the other because neither major party candidate has actually crossed the 50% threshold. And then you get all the think pieces in the world about, well, where would Jill Stein's voters actually have gone? And does this person even have the right to be on a ballot? And is it responsible to vote third party? And ranked choice voting eliminates that. If you have a contribution to make, you can be in the race. You can be on the ballot without harming anybody else's chances. It is just about who votes for you, not whose votes you're taking. We also eliminate the uncertainty. We know where Jill Stein voters go with ranked choice voting. And I pick on Jill Stein just because she's a good example, I think, a clear example of this. But if you rank that third party, that underdog candidate is the one who is speaking to your heart, you can just vote for them. You don't have to worry that you're wasting it. You vote for that candidate, and then you still get to weigh in on the ultimate top two matchup. The other part of the spoiler effect that I mean is often you get two candidates who are similar in some way. Maybe they are of the same racial demographic. They're two women, they're two young people, they're two progressives, they're two people from the same neighborhood, whatever it is. And all of us voters, especially those of us spending time talking about ranked choice voting on a Sunday, we consume a lot of political analysis and we try to vote like pundits. And so we go, ooh, okay, well, those two candidates are going to split the fill in the blank vote. So they are probably not going to win. So I'm going to vote for this other person who has a better shot of winning. And we might be right. Two candidates who are similar in some way could currently damage each other's chances by being in the race together. And then you have party leadership and kind of the powers that be telling would-be candidates, not only do we already have someone for this job, but we already have someone like you. Ranked choice voting eliminates that need for gatekeeping, because if two candidates share a characteristic and that characteristic is what voters want, then they don't split the vote. Voters ultimately get someone who meets that criteria, and they don't harm each other's chances by being there together. And then the other part, which again, I know Tamaya is going to touch on, I think benefit 3, the lack of negative campaigning, and benefit 4, the lack of gatekeeping, lead to more opportunities and lower barriers to entry for women and people of color. And ranked choice voting has been shown time and time again to be one of the structural changes that leads to more diverse representation. Okay, I'm trying to keep an eye on the clock, but I do want to show this map. I love this map. We borrowed this from FairVote, which is a national org that works on ranked choice voting. My favorite part about this map is how many colors are needed to show all the different ways ranked choice voting is used around the country. Ranked choice voting is not an ideology. Ranked choice voting is math. It gets painted with a pretty partisan brush sometimes because everything does, I think, these days. But it's just a solution to various different problems. So if you look at this one, all these light purple states are states where at least one locality, city, county, or town, uses ranked choice voting for local elections. You can see Virginia is one of those. Our two little dots are Arlington and Charlottesville, and I will cover the law in a minute that allows us to do that. But you can see the dark purple states are Alaska and Maine. They use ranked choice voting statewide for almost all elections. Hawaii is that yellowy color. They use ranked choice voting for special elections. And then one of my favorite parts are these like navy blue states, this southeastern corner, this deep south. They use ranked choice voting to solve a really specific problem. And Andrew Yang briefly mentioned on this. If you blinked, you would have missed it last night. But these are the states that have a majority requirement in their state constitution. If no one crosses the 50% threshold in an election, the top two candidates go into a runoff. Everybody has to come back in 4 weeks. It is expensive. The voter turnout plummets. And what do you do with your military and overseas voters? And that is the question that these 6 states have answered by using ranked choice voting. There's no time to get new ballots for the runoff out to military and overseas voters. So what they do is use ranked ballots. So if your first choice didn't make it to the runoff, okay, we just go to your second choice and you get to participate just as thoroughly as someone who is there in person on election day. So I love that. Ranked choice voting in Virginia, what we currently have is a local pilot program that passed in 2020. Delegate Sally Hudson was the patron of that. She is no longer in the legislature, but still works on ranked choice voting. That law allows cities and counties to adopt ranked choice voting for their city council elections or their county board of supervisors elections. It is set to expire in 2031. Arlington and Charlottesville are the two localities that have taken the state up on their offer. Arlington has used it now several times in county board elections, and Charlottesville has used it last year for the first time in their city council primaries. It allows for a lot of flexibility based on what the locality needs. What we would like to do, the bill that's in the legislature now, that is passed in the Senate and passed in the House, so we're looking for a pretty smooth path to Governor Spanberger's desk, fingers crossed. It would add towns to the localities allowed to implement ranked choice voting for their local governing bodies. And it also will make the option permanent. So that sunset will go away and give us all a longer path to continue helping localities to adopt this where it's helpful. The other thing we would like to see, and there's no legislation currently pending, but hopefully in the near future, we think it would be really effective in Virginia to give the political parties the option to use ranked choice voting in their party primaries. Again, mostly to navigate these big fields and get rid of the negative campaigning, all of those benefits, just ultimately produce a candidate who's more representative of not only the primary voters, but also the overall electorate in the general election. What can you do? I'm going to be coming back to these slides at the end, and I'm going to be putting these links in the chat for you all as well. But you can sign our petition that will put your information in our system. We were a staff of 2 until Friday, and my coworker has been hired by the Spanberger administration. So I am currently a one-woman staff. I do not have time to spam you, I promise. So we are very responsible with your information, but that will send an email to your delegate and your senator, letting them know that you support ranked choice voting and encouraging them to do the same. You can volunteer. You can visit our Richmond page on our website. You can sign up to be part of our LAG, which is what we call our local action group. And you can be part of this growth. We need people to work at festivals, to do speaking engagements, to find speaking engagements, to really help us build and get the word out about ranked choice voting and its possibilities.